Welcome back to the second hour of our study today. This is Conscience, Morality, and the Spiritual Life, Lesson 54. We'll pick up on our slides with slide 58 in the combined notes. And we're discussing the 9 in the Enneagram strategy, the Enneagram personality analysis. And we'll pick up with coping strategy. First, we'll spend a moment in silent prayer, if necessary, to utilize 1 John 1:9. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness, so that we might have communication with God himself, with the Holy Spirit's teaching ministry, to allow us to see ourselves as we study. Please pray with me. Father, as we look at the Enneagram 9 this hour, we ask for insight into our own actions, our own strategies that we use in various situations in which we might be a 9. We ask that you show us how we have done it in the past so that we might avoid it in the future. We thank you for this time together, and we ask that you bless it in Jesus' name. Amen. The coping strategy of the 9. Because of the way they filter, some 9s saw their childhood as one in which they felt overlooked or ignored and felt they had to get along or go along with the wishes of others. Other 9s describe having had a pleasant childhood with almost no family conflict. In response to these environments, they learn to identify with others' positions, forget their own point of view, and go along to get along. Major traits of the 9. 9s merge with others energetically, taking on the feel and positions of others, thus losing touch with their own internal experience and priorities. As one of the 3 anger types, 9s can be very out of contact with their own anger, which can leak out in the form of passive aggression, stubbornness, and passive resistance. Typically, they are more focused on others than on themselves. The strengths of the 9s can be skilled mediators and loyal, steadfast partners and friends. They can also be warm, understanding, and caring. The challenges to the 9. They can also have difficulty feeling and expressing anger, dealing with conflict, knowing what they want, and differentiating their experience from others in their lives. The instinctive 9 has no priorities. We don't always have to go to the movies to see a type acted out in vivid color. When we get to 8s and 9s, we can just remember the 1996 presidential elections. Bob Dole was a clear 8 and Clinton a 9. Clinton can easily be confused with a 3 because, like a lot of 9s, he gets swept up in whatever is going on. Clinton is leading a 3 country in a 3-ish job, so when he just goes with the energy flow, he looks like a 3. So that 9 sometimes can look like other things, other types, because of the situations. Because again, if your primary objective is to avoid conflict, you're going to go with whatever flow is out there to avoid conflict. And so that's why 9s are very hard to type sometimes, because they can look like these other things in their desire to get along. But here are some things that point to Clinton's 9ness. The New Yorker from September 23, 1996, describes his giving a speech in this way. He gave a long speech. It was not a good speech in any classical sense. It was, as most of his speeches are, too multitudinous in specifics and lacking in coherence. But it was casual and fluid, moving from one part to another with an internal rhythm. It was likable, and the man who was delivering it was likable too. So that's the 9ness of Clinton in this speech. Later, they described his method of giving speeches. Merely addressing what Clinton says is an exhausting, endless chore, as George Bush found, because he says so much and because the things he says are all so mixed together. Some are true, some are not. Some are important, some are meaningless, some have nothing to do with Clinton, some are real, some are vapor. Dole may have thought this was strategy, and it was, but it was his Enneagram strategy, not a political strategy. Nines do not have a clear grasp of what is primary and what is secondary, and they are not organized thinkers as a rule. What the frustrated writers report is just the muddled, wandering, unprioritized global thinking of a 9. Like the 2-3-4 center has confusion about how to feel, the 5-6-7 center has a knot in the will, and the 8-9-1 center, often called the gut center or instinctive center, has a knot in their thinking. If you're good at feeling, then you're not good at thinking. In a certain way, they don't think clearly, especially with words. They often have an uncanny intuition, a gut feeling, but they tend not to be articulate. Clinton's speech patterns reveal the life struggle of the 9s. They know what they believe, but they have a hard time articulating it. 9s tend to merge with their environment, go with the flow, include everyone. They are often leaders because they know what everybody else wants, and that is what they want. Clinton is not our only recent 9 president. Reagan was a 9. His falling asleep was metaphorical. 9s are oblivious to themselves. Reagan's cheerful oblivion was one way the 9 minimizes life's struggles. Eisenhower was a leader, but his campaign slogan had no content at all. It simply said, "I like Ike." 9s are often lovable. Reagan was loved even by people who disliked his economic and political policies. Quayle, another 9, is a little different. He manifests the same thinking problem that Reagan and Clinton do, only his was more of a vacant nobody at home symptom rather than the simplified Reagan thought cloud or the prolix unprioritized thought of Clinton. These politicians are intelligent 9s, but their intelligence is interpersonal, intuitive, and nonverbal. Those who have worked with legislators, politicians here in our state capital will see this, a lot of 9ness in them, in these people. They run to become leaders, to solve problems and help everybody get along. And so you see a lot of 9ness in politics. Dole had a hard time attacking Clinton because Clinton was all over the lot. He had so many ideas, so many positions, that Dole could shoot down one or some, but Clinton had no priorities, so Dole couldn't focus his 8-ish wrath on any important one. Dole had a few broad planks, which he defended with fierce 8ness. Clinton had 300 skinny ones. Reagan was hard to attack too, the Teflon president, because he talked in anecdotes and little stories that really didn't have any cognitive dimension. How do you attack a little story? 9s specialize in being hard to attack. From childhood, they perfected the art of not getting caught in storms, of staying alive in a hostile or unstable environment. They emotionally and intellectually just hunker down and lie low. They often have a sweet quality about them with no hard edges. 9s have anger, a lot of it, but it's imploded, turned in on themselves. It smolders, but it doesn't explode very often. Rather, it becomes passive-aggressive, extremely hard to deal with. Clinton is often attacked for having no agenda, and that's almost right. People sense this about Bill and Hillary. He is our leader, she is his. Watch when Clinton ends his speeches. That plea for Congress to work with him is real. He doesn't like conflict deep down, and he would really like to cooperate. His 9 agenda is to get along with everyone, including everyone. Remember his first inauguration? The way America looks. With every kind of music and art he could cram into it. 9s often have difficulty prioritizing. Clinton is no exception, and they merge with whoever has a strong agenda. The speaking style of a 9 is a kind of low-key absence, the numb 9. I have a young friend who has the maddening habit of calling me up and talking for a long time and saying only one or two things. He repeats and repeats and repeats until I am ready to ask if he is deliberately torturing me. If he is, I will give him whatever he wants. And I like him. He has a heart of gold, a smile that is negotiating currency, and he wouldn't hurt anyone or anything. He's a 9. Why then does this 9 repeat? Because he has an inner conviction that his words don't get through, which is in turn rooted in a deeper conviction that they don't count because he doesn't count. Repetition can function like screaming. Mothers often combine them with, if I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times. At the heart of the nine strategy is a deep-seated, often unacknowledged hopelessness. Their sin is traditionally called sloth or indolence, as we saw earlier, which is best understood as spiritual laziness. Don't expand it to all kinds of laziness. Many nines work extremely hard, but they fail to pay attention to their own spiritual needs. They ignore their most important task in life, the cultivation of their own soul. Laziness in this context means doing the extracurricular and not paying attention to the main concerns. Nines often have trouble staying on track to get a job done. They can be distracted by anything. Focus is difficult for them. So they will set out to clean the garage and end up deciding to plant the seeds in an old packet they found. But of course, first they have to dig up the garden. And before they do that, they have to organize the shovels and the rakes. And before they do that, and so the whole day is gone and they haven't cleaned up the garage yet. They can be very easily distracted. They raise passive aggression to an art form. They see how energetic you are, but that's easy for you to do. You have a life. There's a great nine country western song. I spent my whole life pleasing everyone but me and making love in someone else's dream. That could be a two also. Nines and twos are often hard to tell apart because they both have this tendency to merge and carry out someone else's agenda. The difference is that the twos keep track and the nines lose track of what they did. Nines are hard to identify because they go with the flow of whatever energy is available, and they'll look like their environment. They have a hard time self-identifying because they identify a little bit with everyone. Unhealthy nines are numb because that is their defense. They don't attack. They take the anger they feel about the situation and turn it in on themselves. They implode instead of explode. They're sitting on a lot of anger, but they can't or don't show it. Instead, they go numb. Sometimes they use drugs, especially alcohol. Sometimes they just sit and eat, and they make really devoted couch potatoes. They can just sit and watch, and somehow they don't even pay attention to the TV or themselves. Their sedentary lifestyle can cause them weight problems. But many nines are not at all sedentary. They are numb inside, but quite active and energetic in their work or hobby. The numbness is about their spiritual task. Their activity often functions as a distraction. Here's another quote. I knew a successful interior decorator who told her husband after 20 years she wanted a divorce and revealed during counseling that she hadn't loved him for as long as she could remember. She just never got around to divorcing him. I told that story at a seminar, and an old woman in the back row got up and said that that was her story, except it was 46 years instead of 20. Their ability to merge and identify with others' agenda has a lovely secondary gain. Nines are often uncommonly sweet, even the males. They have few hard edges. They know well how not to offend anyone. They can negotiate because they see everyone's position so clearly, but they have a lot of trouble with their own. Nines often have a childhood background in which conflict raged, and they just hunkered down to let it go over their heads. Or they were faced with conflicted parents, and it would have been emotional suicide to take sides. So they learned to straddle, to be inconspicuous, to look friendly to opposing sides. And in the process, they learned to delete themselves and their opinions. Their agenda is to get along, not to push their own views. The psychological consequences are a kind of spacing out, a neglect of themselves, and a kind of low-key absence. They join, but they don't lead. They join, but come late or stay on the margins until they get focused. They are practically immovable. Think of Anita Hill, a young black female facing the most powerful white males in captivity as they grilled her about Clarence Thomas. She didn't get angry. She didn't get defensive. She didn't rattle. She stood firm. Nines can be the most powerful number on the circle. They can get everyone together. They can hold the team and keep it productive. The nine and the self-preservation subtype has an affinity for things. Sorting is a technical term meaning an inner disposition or preparedness to look for one thing and not another. A hungry person looks for food. He looks at the entire environment, but all he sees is food. When trying to sort for the nine energy, we face a difficult task because we are sorting for what is missing or non-existent. We are looking for someone who is acting out of a sense of a missing self. While some may be born with a 9-ish energy, a frequent scenario has the child feeling overlooked in some fundamental way. The 9 child then decided that being overlooked is the way life is, so they overlook themselves. They see what others want and need, but have a difficult time seeing clearly what they want and need. With that starting point, let's look at the self-preservation type, if self-preservation 9 isn't an oxymoron. Remembering Thompson's law that we never get enough of what we really don't want, it is symbolically consistent that the 9 will seek a substitute for the unclaimed self. The word we use to describe this in action is appetite. 9s who focus on themselves, remember the 3 foci, the one, the few, and the many, develop and distort their need for things. Self-preservation 9s take things with them. Purses full of everything from spare batteries, plenty of sweets, maps, fingernail clippers, extra money, the address book. You get the picture. Self-preservation 9s can take an hour to pack for a 30-minute trip. Office supplies will abound at home. The car can have almost no trunk space left. And let's not talk about closets and pantries. Food, of course, is primary. And concomitantly, personal weight can be a problem. Unless the self-preservation 9 has an unusually forgiving metabolism, she or he will run the risk of obesity. When I did my survey, about half of the reporting 9s had a weight problem. Food is comfort. Food is escape. Food is ritual. Food is how 9s will symbolically love themselves. And because food is symbolic love, it feels like the missing self is being nurtured. 9s in general have a shortage of energy about accomplishing what most needs to be accomplished. Many compensate with ritual or structure. When they rise in the morning, the day is on automatic pilot, so they don't have to exert the mental aggressive energy to decide. So they just do what they usually do on every day like this. The same foods, clothes, routes to work, drinks after work. For many couch potato 9s, television can be a serious problem. If certain programs become part of life, they become really attached. The usual descriptive word is to veg out. Rituals can substitute for personal decision. 9s, if unhealthy, can be quite irresponsible, and when they are, they pay closer attention to the preconceived rituals than to what they should be doing for their own good. Another place appetite shows up in the 9 is in collections. Books, mugs, trinkets, trophies, almost anything will do as long as it diverts the 9 away from what they need to be doing for their soul. Unlike 5s who might collect for investment and do so quite shrewdly, 9s often don't distinguish between the essential and the trivial, so they collect promiscuously. Boxes, closets, halls, and attics are all fair game for storage. Appetite 9s, on the one hand, gather all sorts of comforts around them. On the other hand, as a life posture, they ask very little of life. These little creature comforts are all they really demand. The implicit bargain with life, of course, is that life isn't supposed to ask much of them either. Watch William Hurt in The Accidental Tourist. His central preoccupation is to avoid hassle. Read involvement, demand, intensity, position, taking a stand for what you really want. Live and let live is good advice for some numbers. For a self-preservation 9, it is redundant and is a neurotic defense. Generally, 9s are patient, steady, easygoing, receptive, relaxed, unself-conscious, agreeable, uncomplicated, contented, comforting, sensual, and idealizing. 9s get into conflicts by being emotionally unavailable, complacent, inattentive, unaware of their own anger, ineffectual, passive-aggressive, unrealistic, resigned, and stubborn. At their best, 9s are self-aware, dynamic, inclusive, steadfast, healing, proactive, contemplative, natural, imaginative, serene and exuberant, engaged and passionate. The way 9s generally see themselves. I seem to be able to see all points of view pretty easily. I may even appear indecisive at times because I can see advantages and disadvantages on all sides. The ability to see all sides makes me good at helping people resolve their differences. This same ability can sometimes lead me to be more aware of other people's positions, agendas, and personal priorities than those of my own. It's not unusual for me to become distracted and then to get off task on the important things I'm trying to do. When that happens, my attention is often diverted to unimportant, trivial tasks. I have a hard time knowing what is really important to me, and I avoid conflict by going along with what others want. I don't know if it's nineness, but I just heard a report this morning about Facebook and statistics that they have gathered. 33% of women who use Facebook check it before they do anything else in the morning. Before they go to the bathroom, wash, shower, whatever. 33, 1/3 of women check Facebook before they do anything else in the morning. 21% of women will get up during the night and check their Facebook page during the night. I need to evaluate that, and I need to figure out why, what that is. But I mean, Facebook, Twitter, all those things are just they are a substitute for life for some types, and I have not seen anything, how our approaches go to really understand that, and I haven't taken the time to sit down to try to analyze it. But that's a distraction. The computer. I come in, I start to work, and I say, well, before I do that, let me check my email. Got to get this report out by 9 o'clock, but let me go check my email. And I got to respond to that email. I got to take up for that. I got to do that. And then pretty soon, it's 8:45. I haven't started on the report yet because I'm distracted, easily distracted as a person who has a 9 wing, and it gets diverted to unimportant tasks. The way 9s generally see themselves continued, people tend to consider me to be easygoing, pleasing, and agreeable. It takes a lot to get me to the point of showing my anger directly at someone. I like life to be comfortable, harmonious, and others to be accepting of me. Type 9 exemplifies the desire for wholeness, peace, and harmony in our world. 9s are easygoing, emotionally stable people. They are open and unself-consciously serene, trusting and patient with themselves and others. Their openness allows them to be at ease with life and with the natural world. As a result, others generally find it easy to be in their company. They are generally good-natured and refreshingly unpretentious. Because of their peaceful demeanor, 9s have a talent for comforting and reassuring others and are able to exert a calming, healing influence in difficult or tense situations. They make steady, supportive friends who can listen uncritically to others' problems as well as share their good times. In work settings, they can be excellent mediators, able to harmonize groups and bring people together by really healing conflicts. 9s can also be quite imaginative and creative, and they enjoy expressing themselves in symbolic ways through music, dance, images, or mythic stories, for instance. Indeed, 9s are drawn to anything that affirms the fundamental oneness of the world. Whether they are working with concepts, diverse groups of people, art forms, or feuding family members, 9s want to bring everything and everyone back to a harmonious unity. In short, 9s are the eternal optimists, always wanting to believe the best about other people with hope for the best for themselves. They hope that every story will end with, and they all lived happily ever after. Healthy 9s will work hard to make things turn out that way, but average 9s will leave it to luck and a prayer, and they may be sorely disappointed. Average 9s focus on keeping their lives pleasant and uncomplicated. They idealize others and live through a handful of primary identifications, usually with their family and close friends. Out of fear of creating conflicts with these people, average 9s hold back their own reactions and opinions and suppress themselves in many other ways. Oddly, 9s can be quite assertive on behalf of others and will work hard for others' benefit, but they can have great difficulty taking actions on their own behalf or even voicing their own real feelings. To maintain the peace, 9s tend not to show their upsets very much, except indirectly, perhaps by eating, drinking, or watching television too much to escape into a more pleasant and comforting world. They also absorb a lot of tension and neglect, even outright abuse, before showing any kind of emotional response. But when their anger has been held back for too long, nines can suddenly blow up, seemingly out of the blue. Once they have gotten something out of their system, nines hope that the storm has blown over and that things will not go back to the way they were before. Fearing that change and potential conflict will threaten their comfort and peace of mind, average nines become more complacent and disengaged. They entrench themselves in comforting habits and routines, puttering around and finding various kinds of busy work to lose themselves in. But the longer they do this, the more difficulty they have rousing themselves to take decisive action or to assert themselves in any meaningful way. They become passive, walking away from problems and brushing them under the rug. Their thinking becomes hazy and ruminative, mostly daydreaming about happy memories or passing time telling comforting stories. They begin to tune out reality to protect themselves from anxiety, often seeming oblivious and unresponsive as a result. Average nines use passive-aggressive acts and stubbornness to resist attempts to engage them. But their peace of mind is little more than an avoidance of problems, a clinging to fantasies and unrealistic hopes. Low-functioning nines can become fatalistic and resigned, trudging through life as if nothing can be done to improve their situation. Engaged in wishful thinking, looking for easy magical solutions, nines keep waiting for their ship to come in. But without some constructive effort on their part, they may wait a long time indeed. In brief, the nines want to find unity and wholeness, to create harmony in their environment, to feel spacious and at ease, to emphasize the positive, to avoid conflicts and tension, to resist change and preserve things as they are, and to ignore whatever would upset or disturb them. Nines do not want to have conflicts with loved ones, to feel cut off or separated from others, to be angry, to be upset or disturbed, to have their habits or routines interrupted, to arouse themselves or to be emotionally uncomfortable, or to be forced to face unpleasant realities. Their hidden side. On the surface, nines appear to be the most easygoing, pleasant people imaginable. They go along with others' wishes, apparently without any desire other than to make sure everyone is at ease and happy. But their hidden side is that they often suppress a huge well of anger that they conceal even from themselves. Nines want to get along with others, but they also want to hold on to their independence and autonomy. They do not want to be messed with. To the extent that they feel they cannot do the latter without endangering their connections with the important people in their lives, they become resentful and enraged. Although they also feel that they can never let this anger out without destroying their relationships. Thus, for nines to develop themselves and their potentials, they must come to grips with their suppressed rage and find constructive outlets for this energy. Now that's a human viewpoint, strategy. Find a constructive outlet for your anger. Relationship issues. Key issues include these: going along with others or agreeing to things the nine has no intention of complying with. Right? So, nines will, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do A, B, and C. This is our plan for the day. We're going to do A, B, and C. All right, everybody, we're going to do A, B, and C? Yeah, everybody, we're going to do A, B, and C. So you start on A, and then you go, where's the 9? Where'd the 9 go? So you go looking for the 9, and the 9's off somewhere else, doing something else. Wait a minute, we agreed we're going to do A, B, and C. That's right, I just need to get this done first. I'll be right with you. So then you're on B. And you say, how come 9's not here yet? So you go looking for 9. Where is 9? 9 says, well, remember that distraction thing? Well, I was on my way to do that, but then this happened, and then I sat down, and then I started watching television, and it's this show that I've never seen before, and I really wanted to see what it was like. Okay, well, we're ready to do C now, okay? So let's get started on C. Where's the 9? 9 9 shows up and says, okay, let's get started. Delay, passive aggressiveness to try to, because they didn't really agree with ABC in the first place, but they would never say, no, I don't think we need to do ABC, or I don't want to do ABC. They say they will, but then they use these techniques to stay out of compliance with what the plans are. Okay? Becoming emotionally unavailable to others, disengaging their attention, or withdrawing rather than dealing with issues. Right? Now, we all do that to some extent. We all, when something comes up that's disagreeable to us, have this tendency to not want to confront and cause any kind of conflict, right? I mean, everyone wants to be conflict-free to some degree or another. So we'll try to avoid those conflicts, but like it's said in the very early slide, it is a compulsion with the 9. So they will disengage their attention, withdraw, rather than dealing with issues. You're having a discussion, it starts to turn bad, they got to leave. They got to get out somehow, okay? Wanting to feel close with someone in their imagination while asserting independence in their behavior, another relationship issue. The no-talk rule, refusing to discuss the real problems. I don't want to talk about it. I just don't want to deal with it right now. Suppression, control, and outbursts of temper, all of which are generally unrecognized and unacknowledged by the 9. Emotional collapsing as a way of stopping discussion about troubling topics. Right? They'll fall apart. Fall apart to avoid conflict. Any strategy is appropriate to the 9. Whatever I have to do. I can fall into a puddle of tears to get away from going through with this discussion about whatever it is. 9s pay a price for their easygoing demeanor. This is under their passion, which is sloth or indolence, because much of it depends on their staying out of contact with their instinctual energies. 9s do this for 2 reasons. First, much of their instinctual aliveness is used to suppress their anger and frustration with people and with themselves. Okay? They know that their anger is, erased. They know that their anger and frustration is bad. And their anger and frustration with people are bad, but they have it themselves. And they will hate themselves for that. They hate themselves for the fact that they're angry, that they're frustrated. See, because rather than dealing with the inner conflict, they handle it with more anger and frustration. To experience their anger directly is extremely threatening to 9s. They feel that their rage could destroy their peaceful world very quickly. So they want to avoid experiencing the anger with themselves. In order to stay in their unrealistic, idealized world, they must constantly suppress their anger and instincts over and over again. But when 9s attempt to dam those energies, the result is inner numbness and general fatigue because so much of their inner resources is devoted to keeping their anger and instincts at bay. They wear themselves out with it. Thus, 9s end up becoming passive and disengaged. Rousing themselves to take an active role in their lives seems difficult. It will all be too much trouble, becomes a constant refrain. So they retreat into safe and comforting routines and the passion of sloth. I just don't want to deal with it. Okay. External conflict, internal conflict. I don't want to think about it. Okay. I don't want to think about what I need to do. I don't want to deal with it right now. I'll deal with it later. Because remember, they're optimistic. It's going to get better. I'll deal with it when it's better, when my situation is better. And of course, then you tend to blame situations. Right? If only I had such and such. If only this weren't true. If I had this situation, then everything would be better. And so they wait for their ship to come in. Something's going to miraculously happen, and they're going to have everything they need materially. Okay? And that's going to solve their emotional problems, their relationship problems, their weight problems, their whatever kind of problem. Something is going to happen to fix it. And when one thing is fixed, everything else is going to be fixed. That's the magic thinking of the 9 type of strategy. So they don't want to make things happen. They want them to happen because it's too difficult to engage life. Besides, if I try to do something, something could go wrong, could end up in conflict, disharmony. I'd be frustrated. I don't want to be frustrated anymore. I'm already too frustrated. So that's how they get into this passion of sloth. Next week, we'll look at the one. And there's a reason it's called the one. It's because it's the best one to be, right? Perfect. Yes. And of course, when you're always right, you're right. Right? So we'll talk about the one next week. And then that will be my last week for a while. I'm going to take a little break. I have some stuff to put together for the next part of our series, for the concluding part of this series. And I also need a break from the computer, and need a break to get a little rest and not work quite so hard. I have worn down again, and had a patient last week that said, "You don't sound like yourself. Your voice doesn't sound the same. You don't have the energy that you usually have." I said, "You're right. You're right." So, because of that and this ongoing back problem, and my testing in the area of filtering by mood, I am going to take a little time off after next week and let you all study either online, old lessons, other teachers, for maybe about a month. That'll give me time to more slowly put together the next phase, because the next phase will be essentially original material, not reviews of other people's works, but new material that I'm putting together, and requires a lot of extra time. So we'll take a break after next week from teaching here, and try to get it all put together for sometime in August or the first part of September to continue this on. I've always, when I've attempted to cover certain things in our studies, I've always been hindered by a lack of time to be able to do exactly what I want to do, so we've just kind of tailed off in our studies without me getting to where I really ultimately wanted to go with it. This time I'm going to try to get there, and so that's going to require some extra time. So, all right, let's close with a word of prayer, and then we'll go into our time of petition and supplication after that. Father, we're grateful for our time together. We're grateful for the study of the Enneagram 9 strategies and seeing ourselves do them in certain situations with certain people, with certain aspects of our life, whether it be our work, our personal relationships, our own dealings with our inner thoughts and our emotions, that we can see ourselves in how we do this. And we so want to leave it behind. We so want to leave our human approach to happiness by putting it off and putting on your spiritual approach. So as we look forward to the study and teaching of the spiritual aspects of our lives and how they replace these things, we ask for your guidance, for your blessing on the study, and we ask it all in Jesus' name.